What we're going to be looking at tonight is a number of things that I've been researching over many, many years, which will give you a really good understanding, I feel, as to what is really going on in the world. Now, when it actually comes to aspects of conspiracy, there is actually a lot of things that people have heard about. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation there. So what we're going to do is try and take the cap off that and actually give you as much evidence as possible to back up some of these wild and woolly theories that some of us have. Okay. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about me, so at least I can earn the right to stand here before you. My background is somewhat unique. I spent 19 years in military special forces, mostly as an undercover intelligence operator on covert operations. I actually spent a number of years as an operational interrogator as well. So during that time, I actually saw what made people winners, and I saw what made people losers. And it was during the time that I started to debrief victims of torture and refugees, I started to realize that I may have actually been not necessarily on the wrong side, but I was actually doing things which actually conflicted a lot with my values. So I started to look at what was really going on in the world. And a lot of what was going on, I actually felt very uncomfortable with. And I said that the next half of my life would actually be taken up with actually not jumping out of airplanes and ruining everyone's day, which I spent a lot of time doing, but actually getting people inspired, getting them to see that there was much more to life than what the media will tell you or what your governments will tell you as well. So what we're going to be looking at tonight is things like the secret government, what is really going on behind the scenes. And once we actually start to deliver that, you'll begin to realize that this whole world is actually built upon quite a web of lies. I mean, how many people here really trust their politicians? Absolutely, or the media, So there's a lot of things out there that are set to just to obscure the truth. So what we're actually going to look today is to shine a bit of light on that truth, because there is no higher principle, I believe, than actually knowing the truth. At least then, if you know the truth, you then have choices as to which way you want to go. So Winston Churchill said that he who ignores history is condemned to repeat it. So what I'd like to do first is to give you a very, very quick history lesson on the history of the world. Because if you understand what has been going on in the past, you'll understand what is actually going on right now, and we can project what is likely to happen in the future as well. So first of all, we look at the first of the real empires, the first empires that came on the planet, which of course looking between the Tigris and Euphrates basin, and there was the Egyptian empire to begin with. Then it moved on to Persia, with Sumeria, Iraq and Iran, largely in the same area but moving through towards the Indus Valley. And then, of course, the Greek Empire carried on with the advent of literature and democracy. We then moved on to Rome after Greece fell, and Rome gave itself over to the Dark Ages and, of course, the Mongol Empire. We then had the rise of the Ottoman Empire, and then later on to the colonial empires of Spain and Portugal, and, of course, France and the United Kingdom. Then, of course, we moved into the British Empire, the largest empire on the planet. And, of course, we then had the Soviet Empire, which grew. And then really to this point now, where the United States could be perceived as one of the largest empires, as this is exactly where all of its influence is, i.e. where its military forces are based. So that is essentially how the empires of the ages have been built up all the way through. So let's have a look back now at those empires and see where they are today. Well, we saw what's happened with Egypt. Egypt is now, of course, the ancient Egyptians have nothing to do with the modern day Egyptians, i.e. the Arabs. So it's a very, very different race indeed. But as we've seen, is massive falls within that with the Arab Spring. We look at Persia, which was, of course, Iraq and Iran. And we see what happened there. Big falls there. And again, most of the sites, most of the historical sites have actually been destroyed now with the wars. We've seen what's happened with Greece. Greece now is being purported as being why the euro will fall, and we've seen widespread unrest in Greece, and they've actually appointed for the first time a technocrat, which is an unelected prime minister. We'll be talking a bit about that a bit later on. We've seen what happened with Rome and Italy. Italy now is going exactly the same way, overspending, their economy is in tatters, and of course they're now trying to push through massive austerity measures which the people aren't going to accept. We saw in Asia the old Mongol Empire with the Uyghurs and Tibetans, and everything is again starting to break apart there. We almost had it with Tiananmen Square, but we're starting to see largely the breakup of the old Mongol Empire. The Ottoman Empire, which is called the Balkans, I spent a lot of time in regards to this conflict, which was the Bosnian and Kosovan conflict, and we saw some massive changes there. With colonial Spain, Portugal and France, each one of them has seen great rioting at the moment as each individual economy, each individual nation is starting to break apart. We saw the fall of the Soviet Empire and the Great Wall as well, the East German Wall, and we started to see the whole of the old CIS, or the old Soviet Union, breaking apart into various different smaller republics. And the British Empire has largely been under stress as well, one of the next ones possibly to fall to economic collapse. And of course we then look at the United States, and this is actually in Disneyland. This is Anaheim, where it's been under martial law for the last 6 weeks. They've just delivered 10,000 body bags there, expecting large riots with the Hispanic groups there. And it always looks bad. That guy there does look very much like Samuel L. Jackson, doesn't it? When you start to recruit Samuel L. Jackson into your police force, you really know that the shit has hit the fan. Yeah? So that's United States. So let's have a look at the Illuminati. There's a bit of a mud map, if you like, of the Illuminati, with all the different guys there. We see that the Order is at the top, and we got the House of Rothschilds over to the right, and over to the left you'll see the Order, which is called the Skull and Bones. This is where most of the US presidents come from, based in Yale. All the George Bushes have actually been through the Skull and Bones Society, and it's basically how the elite of the Ivy League are actually destined to become the political leaders of America. In the center you'll see the Bilderbergers. The Bilderberg group was a group of industrialists, of bankers, business people, all get together once a year basically to decide what is going to happen in your world. They decide which wars are going to happen, which wars are going to cease, and which economic collapses or countries will rise and fall in order to get a full balance within the world. And then we get linked down to the United Nations as well. The United Nations, if you follow the line through the Council of Foreign Relations and the House of Rockefeller, the UN building was actually given to them by the Rockefellers, who was actually the chief of the Council for Foreign Relations at the time. It's certainly not an altruistic effect. Basically, we're actually looking at creating a one world government, a one world army, a one world economy. And as we can see, all the other small little ones, from MI5 to the GRU, the KGB, the CIA, even to the mafia squirreled away in the corner there. You know, we think of them as being such a large organization. In the big scheme of things, they're actually a very, very small part of a very, very big picture. So this is why most people have difficulty dealing with the aspects of a conspiracy theory, because at once they will say, well, why would anyone create a plan that is not going to be executed and delivered within their lifetime? But of course, we're talking hundreds of years plans here, between potentially thousands of years to actually get their aims and their goals. So they're not necessarily interested in getting it done just within this lifetime. Also, because they hold no real allegiance to any one religion or any one country, because we're all very focused on our nationalistic fervor of who we are and which flag we represent, or which country that we are, these guys don't really care. They run multinational countries, multinational organizations that actually have no flag. You know, they actually are beyond countries. And this is why at some point some of these conspiracies may seem to be be Masonic or Judaic or reptilian alien, whatever they would be, but most people can't get to grips with actually it's all of them, because the Illuminati cover everything, not just one particular thing. Now, I don't want to scare people. This is not about scaremongering. This is about delivering you some information so that you can then start to create some choices around what it is that you want to do. So let's have a look at the Illuminati then. It started in 1776 under this guy, Adam Weishaupt. Now, he created a thing called the Illuminati Manifesto. Interestingly enough as well, 1776 was the date of the American Revolution as well. This actually put into being a whole bunch of revolutions, which was therefore to destroy some of the monarchies and to replace them with countries that adhere to certain principles under a grander plan. Now, this is what they were after. This is the Illuminati seek a new world order. Their objectives are as follows: the abolition of all ordered governments, the abolition of private property, the abolition of inheritance, the abolition of patriotism, the abolition of the family, the abolition of religion, and the creation of a world government. Does that sound like fun to you? It doesn't sound like very much fun at all. You can imagine these meetings, they weren't really a joyous occasion, were they? You can imagine. But it's all about money, it's all about power. And that is really where everything is coming towards. So who are these people then? Who are the Illuminati? Well, they actually are split down into 13 distinct families. Now, 13 is a very significant number. And the Illuminati, they love dates, they love number, they love ritual. And therefore, Michelle will be going into a lot about the significance of the 13. So, who are they? Well, these are the basic 13 families. The Rothschilds, who are the major bankers. Bruce, as of like Robert the Bruce as well, very old and ancient family. The Kennedys, we know about. The Medicis, major traders. The House of Hanover, which is where a lot of the British royal family come from. The Habsburgs, which are the bankers. Krupps are the major German industrialists. Plantagenets, quite a few of our kings and queens have come from there. The Rockefellers are obviously the American industrialists. The Romanovs, which are the Russians. The Sinclairs, actually we've got one here tonight. The Sinclairs were the Scottish knights, linking into the Knights Templar, and the Warburgs and the Windsors, which of course our gracious Queen comes from. So these are the 13 major families. Underneath this, there is a whole bunch of other families that have, almost by blood right, links to the Illuminati. And most of those families you would recognize as being in the houses of representatives, in politicians, a lot of the people that you would know and have heard about. So that's basically them. So this is the next level then. So you can see their tendrils are into everything. Everything where there is some element of power. Everything from the banks and the money. And I think we can all understand that the banks are actually working in cahoots together in order to actually create a false economy. I think most people would understand that. The secret societies, again, they all come from various roots. When you actually look at them all back and see where they've come from, they come from very, very distinct understandings and old wisdom groups, and they've largely split along the way over political and idealistic lines all the way through from there. The political groups, all the various different Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, all of these are political think tanks, and they're think tanks in order to be able to give certain people the information in order that they can make the decisions about your world. These are not, sort of like charity groups that are there to do a good job for everybody. They're there to do a job for a certain group of people, and that unfortunately is not you. The intelligence group, the CIA, KGB, FBI, I can tell you from first hand that we all talk to each other. It's not that we're all major enemies. We used to trade beluga caviar and blue jeans with the Russian KGB. They used to love us and we used to love them. So we swap a lot of information. There's a lot of cross-pollination of information and operations, especially with things like the mafia, drug cartels, Interpol. The American Special Forces actually go in. Sometimes they're training the drug cartels. Sometimes they're trying to suppress them. It depends which day of the week it is, really. And then our religious groups as well, the World Council of Churches, all of these again are there geared towards power. It's not about enlightenment, it's not about spirituality. You know, there's very, very little in organized religion that is actually based around giving you the best possible service. It's about keeping them in power. And we see that, of course, with our polys. And then the educational group as well, because if you can actually suppress and influence what the children are being taught, then you actually create a new generation of hamsters on the wheel. You know, isn't it interesting now that even like the Australian government have had like 60 years to get their education to get together, and yet more kids are going out of school now with the inability to communicate, either reading and writing. How does that work? It's pretty simple stuff, and yet still none of them are ever taught how to balance a checkbook, how to actually make good financial decisions, what a mortgage is. Hey, but they're taught trigonometry and logarithms. How many people here have used a logarithm? You know? So all of those things are quite remarkable of why they're doing what they're doing. So the Illuminati then actually have a 13-step system. And it starts down here with the ones that don't really matter to them. They're feeders. They're called feeders. So we have the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry, White Masonry, then up to York Rite and Scottish Rite. So they're feeding through people that actually have values and people that have influence. They bring them in under what is called a false flag. So they actually, a lot of these people down here, lovely people, they're there actually to help people. But as they start to move through, they're initiated into further areas of what is going on. Now, not all of this is bad, okay? So we do actually have very much like a white Illuminati and a dark Illuminati as well. It's almost like the dark side of the Force, Luke, you know? They are. This is where they get these plots, you know? So as you start to move up to Communism, Grand Orient, the B'nai B'rith is an Israeli or Zionist organization. Now, when I actually talk about the Jews tonight, I'm not talking about the Hebrews, the old Jews. We're talking about Zionists. They're very different. Okay, these are different types of Jews that actually are not, they don't actually, they have a bloodline, but they're nothing to do with the old Jews. This is a new race, which is very powerful. The 300 is what I told you about, the Council of 300 or the Club of 300. All of these make up the Bilderbergers. All of the royal family are actually involved in this. Most of the people that you would see there are some of the largest families in the world. Very few are heads of state. The Illuminati don't like to be heads of state. They like to work at one level down. They influence the heads of state. They influence the prime ministers and all of those as well, and the kings. The Council of 33 is a 33rd degree of Freemasonry, and all of that is you have to be asked to join. And the Council of 13, these are the big boys. These are the ones that really no one really knows a lot of who they are. We can actually there's only conjecture as to who they are. They don't unfortunately publish the minutes of their meetings, but they make up largely what is the Illuminati. So as I said, there is a dark and a light. For the last 2,000 years, there has actually been a war going on between the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller. So the Knights Templar are the white guys, and if you can see as well, even to this day, when you actually consider that you still have the Red Cross and the St. John's Ambulance, they're still actually based around what these guys initially purported to be. So the Knights Templar would actually comprise things like the White Brotherhood and actually some of the guys which we will call the Light. And on the dark, you've got the Knights of Malta, the Vatican, the Dark Cabal, the Illuminati, Mafia, all of that as well. So they're vying for power. This is why when you see some selected assassinations, a lot of this is about just stopping some people getting to power. It's like a chess game. In fact, this is why they call it the Black and White Wars. Indeed, this is why the Freemasons actually, their carpet is actually a checkerboard, because they recognize that there is a balance. It's a yin and yang, if you like, where if there is balance in the world, whether they create a war between North and South or they create a war between East and West, it creates that sense of balance, keeps people into a sense of fear, and brings them into a mindset where they can be controlled. Okay, that's really how it works. It's actually very, very basic psychology. So let's have a look at one of these groups then, which is the Skull and Bones Society, based in Yale. That's it there on Temple Street. It's called The Tomb. And the Skull and Bones Society has always recruited from Yale's elite. You know, you get asked to join. I say all of the Bushies have come from there. It's quite interesting when George W. was going against John Kerry for the presidency. Both of them were bonesmen. They were both in the same lodge. And this skull that you see there, the skull that's actually on the table there, is actually the skull of Geronimo, the Indian. And Geronimo's body was actually exhumed by George H. Bush, and a whole bunch of other bonesmen, and they stole the skull from the grave. And they've used it as a ballot box. You see there's a little square there, that's the ballot box. And you get given 2 balls. It's to put your balls in. Not in a bad way. You actually get a black and a white ball, and when people actually go up for election to be a bonesman, they actually put a ball into the skull. And if there's any black balls in it, this is why they get the expression of people being blackballed, then they're not allowed to join, but no one knows who put the black ball in. Anyway, so this picture, last one there, was actually from Sotheby's, the auctioneers, and this skull actually came up for auction only 2 weeks ago, and it's now been taken off of auction due to a title claim. So obviously the Native Americans have got their money together from the casinos and are actually fighting to get poor old Geronimo's head back. This is the Skull and Bones. So let's have a look at other Skull and Bones. Well, on the left-hand side over there, you'll see this is a Master Mason's tracing board. This is when you actually go to the 3rd degree of Masonry. I'm a Freemason, by the way, so I actually know this firsthand. The tracing board there, the Skull and Bones, is just literally to show you and to illustrate the fact of mortality. And it got taken up as a symbol. And you'll see this on Spanish grave sites as well. You actually see it before you go into any Spanish graveyard. You'll see the Skull and Bones on top of it. The Mason's ring in the middle there of a 33rd degree Mason. But also on the dark side as well, you see the cap of the SS, the Nazi SS. They use exactly the same symbol because they're on the darker side of the same coin. And down below there, you see this is a Catholic cathedral. And all of those skulls and bones that you see in there are actually the skulls and bones of the monks that served that cathedral. So it's nice that you continue to stay on in the place, isn't it? You know, even if it is as a chandelier or something like that, you know. Now on the left you'll see the old Jolly Roger, the pirate flag, and this is actually quite interesting because when the Templars were actually suppressed, the Templar fleet was based at La Rochelle in France, and on the night of the suppression of the Templars, the fleet disappeared. Never to be found again, and they took with them all of the treasure of the Templars, all of the gold that King Philip wanted, and they sailed off, never ever to be seen again. Later on it came about, you see, with the military lodges, every regiment used to have a Masonic lodge, and every ship always had a Masonic lodge as well, every British ship of the line. So when a British ship of the line was traversing around the Caribbean, and these other ships, these pirate ships, when they would see a British man of war coming, they would actually hoist up the Jolly Roger, which was not to say we're going to kick your ass because we're mean pirates, arr. They're actually basically saying we're Freemasons, and there's not a single instance in history where any British ship of the line engaged a pirate ship, you know, once they flew the Jolly Roger. Indeed, the only pirate ever to be hung was Henry Morgan, and he was the only one that wasn't a Freemason. Okay? So again, this is how it all works. They all look after their own. But it's not necessarily in a negative way. They're actually looking after their own because all of their own take a vow and an oath towards humanity. So it's like a known person. The person is that you know what this guy's about because you know that person's values. And that is why they do what they do. So let's have a quick thing about why wars are fought, and I can tell you this firsthand. I used to actually prophesize where all the wars are going to be fought. This is Europe. This is Europe during the Cold War. We were 5-1 against, with the NATO forces against the Soviet bloc. Now, when you actually look at this, you actually see, if you're a tactician, that you've got this massive bunch of red in there, and they can come that way, they can come that way, or they can come this way. Well, to get round that way is bloody cold and very, very dodgy to try and get through, because you have to get 3 million men across this bit here. It's just not going to happen. So Iceland and northern Britain actually reinforced that, and that's largely safe. Here, we actually were able, we knew with our technology and what we had, we could actually stop the Russians in the middle. So they were looking to come round here. Now, in 1974, the Greeks and the Turks fell out, and they had a war themselves. So it's two NATO nations against them, against each other. And of course, Turkey being a Muslim nation, we felt that they were likely to be going to be wobbly and might even leave the alliance. Now, at that point, they were the fourth largest army in the world. So if you were to think about it like an old game of Risk, you know, you would actually want to put more troops in to bolster up where you're weak. So they needed to get at least 50,000 troops into the Balkans area to free up and actually secure what is called the wings of NATO. The only way you could do that is with this little country here, called Yugoslavia. So what they did is created a war in Yugoslavia, which is actually really easy to do, because you've actually got Slavs, you've actually got Muslims, and you've got Croats or Roman Catholics all living in a false, very, very loose amalgamation of states. So what they did is kick it off again, and what basically the Balkans has a war every 40 years, almost whether they like it or not. So it was actually really easy to actually get them working against each other. Now I got involved in this, and certainly in Sarajevo, what happened is that the UN started put troops into as peacekeepers. Well, they put the Ukrainians in with the Slavs, you know, with the Serbs. So the Ukrainians, yeah, like good Slavs, took off their flak jackets, gave them all to the Serbs, got the Slivovitz out, and just went on the piss for 3 weeks. You know, we actually couldn't get them in radio contact. You know, and that was their view of actually peacekeeping. With the Muslim group, they actually put the Egyptians into them. That was great, because the Egyptians got there and said, "You are our Muslim brothers. As part of our Muslim religion, we should give you 10% of what we have. So let's open up our armories, and we're going to give you 10% of our arms and ammunition." That really helped police all of a sudden, you know. And then, of course, with the Croats, they put the French in. Now, the French, they actually didn't do anything like wanting to protect anybody. They just charged everyone $1,200 US a piece to actually get out in an armoured personnel carrier, and then created the largest cocaine ring out of the French military postal service, you know. Now, I know all of this because this was actually part of a 60-page secret document, and I actually wrote 40 pages of that 60. So this is why wars are fought. They're there and put in so that you could actually put in 50,000 troops, which are there today under American command, under NATO command. This is interesting because this is NATO states. As part of being a part of NATO, when you are attacked, the whole of NATO gang up on you. Okay? Well, Yugoslavia wasn't actually part of NATO at all. So now you've got NATO troops there, not UN troops. And this is how things happen. So many people had to die in order that we had to get 50,000 US troops there. That's how life works, unfortunately. So when we put our men and women in the uniform and we send them out to war, we're not doing it because of the right reasons most of the time. I got out of the military because we ran out of just wars. There are no wars out there at the moment that are just. They're there to back up someone's oil price, or they're there to back up something else. So let's have a look at oil while we're talking about that. This is the Russian oil pipeline. If you want to know where the wars are, I was telling the people this 15 years ago. I said, if you want to know where the wars will be, watch the pipeline. It starts in a little place called Chechnya. Anyone heard of that? That's a bit of a bastard place to be, isn't it? Yeah, they kicked off a war in Chechnya. Then it goes down to Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan. And then it goes into a little place called Afghanistan. Oh, have we heard of that one, perhaps? You know? As we see of Afghanistan, it goes down. And of course, around the other side, we have Iran. Oh, we need to have some troops in Iran as well to protect the pipeline. Where's the next one? Where's the next level of war? Well, of course, it goes down into Iran as well. So you can actually see where all the wars were going to be starting 15 years ago as they were creating the pipeline. So it means that they have things like weapons of mass destruction, which are not there, you know, but it gives us a very good opportunity to go in and place, and all the time it's about 50,000 standing US-led troops. That's how it works. So this is all tactical. Most of the wars that are being fought now are being fought for tactical reasons, to secure the pipelines, to secure the income of a very small group of people. And you make nothing from that. But you're expected to line up for death so that you can actually do that and help that. Okay. So let's have a look at the money side of things then, because if you follow the money, you follow the problem. This is what J.P. Morgan, all heard of J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley and things like this? This is what he said. Capital must protect itself in every way. Debts must be collected and loans and mortgages foreclosed as soon as possible. When through a process of law the common people have lost their homes, they will be more tractable and more easily governed by the strong arm of the law applied by the central power of leading financiers. People without homes will not quarrel with their leaders. This is well known among our principal men now engaged in forming an imperialism of capitalism to govern the world. By dividing the people, we can get them to expend their energies in fighting over questions of no importance to us, except as teachers of the common herd. Anyone want to put their money in Morgan Stanley now? Or Chase Morgan Bank? That's what they think of you. You're the common herd, you're cattle. Okay? You're there to actually be used. And therefore, as soon as they can actually... Have you noticed that the number of mortgages and foreclosures have gone up suddenly? Do you think they're getting closer towards their plan? Do you think if they collapse the economy, that all of a sudden, do you think the banks are going to say, oh no, forget that debt? Yeah? Remember, banks can actually lend 12 times what they actually have and then charge you interest on money that has never existed. That is the reality of it. Does that seem fair to you? Yeah? But that's what we're dealing with. Until people start to say no, it will continue. So let's have a look at from the money side of things then. Okay, so a global finance aim is one world currency. Phase 1 was the euro. Now, this the euro's already been in. The euro is largely collapsing, as we've seen. So the euro is already there. Now, the euro, if you notice, was actually called the euro dollar at one point. And they started to peg the euro and the dollar together. That was for a specific aim. And that specific aim was so that they could actually get those currencies so in par that it would just be easy just to merge them together. Now the second one is actually, which was the GFC, followed by the Euro. They're looking to try and collapse the American dollar. This Euro, as you see, 2008. This is when they actually started making these coins. This is what they've been expecting for some while. And if you see, it's called the Union of North America. So this is a new currency that will encompass North America, Canada, Mexico, and large parts of South America. It's already there. Okay, so the eagle on top of the world. Interesting, remember the eagle, because the eagle is a very, very clear indication that you've got Illuminati playing the game there. Phase 3 was the ASIO, which is the Asian currency, with a little owl on there. Remember the owl, because he's significant as well. So this would actually, we would actually become part of the ASIO. It also doesn't help as well that our secret intelligence service is actually called ASIO as well. So there's going to be a bit of confusion there, or perhaps not. But phase 3 was actually the ASIO. Phase 4, well, I'll tell you about phase 4 a bit later. So why the Zionists? Well, the Zionists actually don't come from Jerusalem at all, or anywhere near the Holy Land. They actually come from this place here called Khazaria. Okay, and the Rothschilds, or the Red Shields, actually used to have as a red shield the six-pointed star. And these guys here actually got pushed out of their homes, and they decided that they were going to get their country back at some point. So they decided that they would actually go back to the old roots of the old tribe of Judah, and actually take on, in 1948, of course, they got their Zion. So interesting as well, as if you've seen the Matrix, yeah, the last city and all that, it's called Zion. There's reasons for this. Hollywood love to give you all of these sort of embedded commands. So the Rothschilds and a lot of what they call the Khazar Jews. The Khazar Jews actually are basically making up the Illuminati and making up a Zionist state called Israel, or Israel. Israel links into Isis, the goddess, Ra of the god, and El of the Elohim, of the gods. So that's what the state that they're bringing together. It's a false state. It's going to have a false religion, and this is why America goes out of its way to back Israel up. It has nothing to do with Judaism. It has all to do with Zionists. And if you notice, when the Arabs are kicking off against them, they don't call them Jews. They call it the Zionist enemy. Because most of the Arabs know what this is about. They know it's nothing to do with Hebrew Jews. Even though 3,000 years ago, the Hebrew Jews are in the graveyards which Palestinians now live on. But that's not the Jews that we're talking about here. We're talking about Jews that come from Khazaria. So let's have a look to see if there's any evidence to back this Zionist principle up. Remember the Olympics? This has just been? Have a look at the logo. The logo was just specifically geared towards making it Zion. And even to the point where you've actually got a dot on the I with a little square in the middle. Why did you have a square in the middle? Doesn't make any sense for 2012, does it? It does if you want to spell Zion, but also that square is actually a place in England. It's actually called the Square Mile. That Square Mile is the city of Westminster. City of Westminster is outside of the law of the United Kingdom. It has its own Westminster police. It has its own Westminster laws, and it has its own Westminster economies, where the Bank of England is, Threadneedle Street, and all of that. So Westminster is actually a state in itself. There are 3 states in the world which are not governed by the laws of those nations, nor are they subject to tax. And that is the Vatican, that is Washington, D.C., and Westminster. Okay? The next one will be Jerusalem. And this is why when you saw on the Olympic opening thing, first of the songs that they sang was Jerusalem, with a big tree coming out. But we'll talk about that as well. So the 5 Olympic rings, of course, link into the 5 continents of the world as well. So again, they're actually giving you a message here that only those who would understand could see. Because if you didn't understand this whole concept of Zion, you wouldn't have understood it. But any Illuminati go, ah, excellent. So that's when we're going to start then. Because 2012, it was the start for the Illuminati main plan. Okay, but it's also the end of an era, which Michelle will be talking to you about. So let's have a look at that. We remember the 13-step pyramid that we saw of the Illuminati? Well, we actually saw that here. We actually see it on the dollar bill. So every single day of the life, you actually see the pyramid with its 13 steps on your dollar bill, with New World Order underneath it. Could they make it any plainer? Yeah, again, with the 6-pointed star as well. And this is what you saw on the London Olympics opening ceremony. 200 people building a 13-step pyramid in the middle of the stadium for everyone in the world to see. They love this stuff. They love flaunting the power that they have, because no one can stop that. Why build a pyramid? Why do that? It doesn't make any sense. It's nothing to do with the UK, nothing to do with the Olympic movement, nothing to do with sport. Yet it's a 13-step pyramid. We know exactly why. Also, this is an old engraving of the Federal Reserve Bank. This was what was called the Aldrich Plan, which was the octopus going into all areas of life, including the Senate and the White House. And of course, they then brought it out right in the middle of the Olympics as well. Again, what is an octopus? What is a large, 300-foot octopus got to do with Olympics? But it has a lot to do with it if you understand the Federal Reserve Bank and the Illuminati. You had Fatboy Slim in the middle of that playing his music. Yeah, and people are going, yeah, an octopus, okay, we don't really get it, but so what? But the people that do get it are the people that need to get it, because this is a call to arms for the Illuminati. So let's look back to that phase 4 there. Remember the eagle on the Amero? This is the eagle on the seal of the United States. If you notice the 13 stars in the middle here, the 13 stars are representative of each one of the Illuminati families that started the New World Order. 13 families representing 13 different root races within the world. 13 root races, 13 distinct races on a spaceship coming from the gods. Does it sound like anything you've heard before? Perhaps like Star Trek, for instance, where you got Mr. Zulu, you got a Chinese, you got a Russian, you got a black, you got an American, all working together, and an alien. I wonder if that's significant. Okay, so 13 stars in the form of a 6-pointed star. It's all there for you to see, right in the middle of the seal of the United States, the presidential seal. There's also 13 arrows here as well. 13 arrows in the claw of the eagle, one for each of the Illuminati families. Okay, they love their symbolism. Let's look at the American flag. Guess how many stripes there would be on the American flag? 13. Okay? So it's all there. The whole point of the United States was to produce a new empire, a new world order that would have an effect on everyone else. And they have for a long time. They had a massive effect economically, massive effect militarily, a massive effect in regards to culture. When you actually think of music, you think of Hollywood, you think of all of these things, all of these areas which the Illuminati can immerse you in regards to information. They got it all. Remember the owl? This is the Bohemian Club. Bohemian Club is 2,500 of the top richest people all get together every year and actually dance around this big owl structure at Bohemian Grove, all naked, whipping each other with birch twigs and things like this. And these guys actually run the economy of the whole world. And they thought, why not just put our owl on the ASIO? They don't have many owls in Asia, but they thought that it was good enough to actually stick on an ASIO coin. Okay, so these guys, George Bush and all this, belong to the Bohemian Grove. And if you look back to our little map of Zion, up here, just where you see Kevin Russ's, is that is Bohemia. Okay, so they're next door neighbours. Okay. So this is what Thomas Jefferson said: I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around these banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power of currency should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Thomas Jefferson. There was only 2 presidents that have tried to do that. One was Abraham Lincoln, the other was JFK. And we know what happened to them. Yeah? So every time that a US president falls outside of what the Illuminati want, he meets a little bit of a grisly end. So this is the grand plan then. One monetary system run by the IMF, the World Bank and the Federal Reserve. One world government run by the United Nations and the World Parliament. One world army used by NATO, the UN, the CIA, MI6 and Mossad. One world enforcement with that, and one world religion with the Baha'i faith, and we haven't got time to go into them. They're based in Israel, and they're actually a very new religion, which is, they call themselves a New Age religion, and basically they want to actually take away all other religions. And one world order with the Bilderberg Group, Committee of 300, Council of 33, Council of 13. That is basically how they intend to run the world. Now, this is what they call ordo ab chaos. From chaos comes order. They have to have chaos. They have to have war. They have to have the breakdown of society. They have to have the breakdown of the family. They have to have the breakdown of the finances in order that they come with a solution. If you notice what we're doing tonight, I'm providing you the problem, and Michelle's going to be providing you with part of the solution. We're doing the same as they do. Okay? They provide a problem, and therefore they've already got the solution in the back, but they wait for you to demand it. You have to demand it. They're not going to come in with tanks and guns and force you to do this. They're going to create so many problems that you will demand it. Yeah, they'll actually demand that you'll demand that your babies are microchipped. You'll demand that you put one world currency, because it's such a pain transferring those currencies, isn't it? You know, you'll demand, you know, chips in your money so people don't mug you. All of this stuff, people are already demanding it. So that's what they're going from. They're going from that type of disorder to order, from foreclosure, from private housing to government housing, so that all of you will live in your own little boxes, work at the sprocket factory, you know, you'll have public transport to and from, and what they want is they want you to be under technocrats. So Greece and Italy have both now put in technocrat prime ministers. They've been unelected by the people. Technocracy was actually largely got rid of in the 1900s as unworkable, because basically as a child grows up, they actually are graded like eggs, and they will say, right, you're a level 1 or a level 5. So level 1s are going to work in the mines, level 5s are going to be your doctors. So you then live in level 5 housing, you marry level 5 people, you actually have level 5 children. But you also are given energy credits. Why do you think they're now giving you carbon tax? Why do you think they're putting solar power on your houses and getting you to add back into the grid so that you're now trading energy? They got you doing it with mobile phones to have credits that expire every month. Because under technocracy, you would be given so many credits according to your rating, which expire at the end of the month and are logged only to you. So you can't trade them. You can't save them for a rainy day. You have to use them, and that's what they want, because that keeps the economy going. It means that so many people are spending so much stuff, churn, 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 churn. But the people that are actually owning all the assets, they're the ones who are sitting pretty while you work for them. That's how that works. So going from starvation, but you're actually going to be going to rationing and food queues, because they want to pool all the food together. You know, they're actually stopping, in America, actually stopping the private growing of food. Now, it is legal to have 30 AR-15 assault rifles in your house, but it's illegal to grow carrots. You know, I mean, what is going on there when people are actually forbidden to do some of the most basic of human undertakings? Do you remember when policemen were like this? Now policemen are like that. You know? And it says rescue on there. Who do you think they're going to rescue? Does that look like any fire and rescue truck you've ever seen? It's a mine-proof anti-personnel carrier. Okay, so basically, the only people they're going to be rescuing is the politicians, you know, as they're being chased around by the people. Okay? Right, I remember when I was a kid, PC Daisy was the only policeman in our village. Yeah? And he caught me doing something weird one day, and he grabbed my ear and took me back to my parents. Most scary thing I've ever had. I have been beaten up in riots. I have actually been captured by enemy. I've been shot at, mortared, all sorts. But nothing scared me as much as PC Daisy gripping my ear and taking me to my parents. You know? And it gave me a real sense of what law and order was. That's not what the police are anymore. Yeah, the police don't do that. They're there to enforce another law, which is not the law that protects you. So, get ready for a world currency. Remember phase 4? Okay, get ready for a phase 4 currency, a new world currency, which is the front page of The Economist. Okay, remember the eagle, because what we're actually looking at there is the new money. It's called the Phoenix. Okay, this again, not 2006 is when they minted this. This is going to be the new level of coin. So after everything goes down, they will issue you with Phoenixes. Okay, and therefore everyone has to trade Phoenixes. If you haven't got Phoenixes, you will not be able to trade. Okay, and that's basically how it works, rising from the ashes. But let's have a look at the Phoenix. Remember from Revelation, where it actually said they forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free man and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead. No one could buy or sell unless he had the mark. Of course, that number is the number of the beast, 666. Okay, this is silver, 999. Put it upside down. There's your mark of the beast, without which no man will be able to trade. They've already got this planned. It's already there, ready to go. And if you wanted any more proof, let's go back to the Olympics, because what was the last thing you saw on the closing ceremony of the Olympics but a bloody great big phoenix for all to see, the biggest phoenix in the world, presiding over the 200 flames of all the countries, next to the 5 rings of the Olympics representing all of the continents. So they're showing to nearly 6 billion people their grand plan. Makes you feel like James Bond film, doesn't it? When he walks in and the villain goes, yeah, this is our grand plan, just before James Bond escapes and actually cocks it all up, you know? But this is it. The Phoenix is rising. This is what they're doing, but they're quite happy, and they're quite almost in an arrogant way. They're actually showing this is what we're about, and you can't do anything about it. We hold the media, we hold the banks, we hold the military, we hold the governments. What are you going to do about it? And then for the last thing, you can imagine the all-seeing eye on the thing. That was the logo of the London Olympics. The single-eyed creature. It's like, how much can you know, it's unbelievable what they're prepared to do. And if you thought that that was just a little bit much, well, let's look at the stadium. There's the lights. There's the light of this all-seeing eye on top of the pyramid. And guess how many pyramids? 13. Most things in life are actually done in pairs, aren't they? There's a balance, but no. Specifically geared towards the 13, and you've got the square and compasses of the Freemasons there as well. So for all to see, And if it wasn't getting any worse, the very last thing you see is the big eye watching down on you. The eye of the Illuminati watching down on all nations, on all the athletes of the whole world. It's all there for those with the eye to see. So, what are we going to do about it? Yeah? So I don't want to depress you, because the fact of the matter is you're already depressed now. Yeah? The fact is that they can't kill us all. The fact is that we are, unfortunately, we're the sheeple. Which one do you want to be? There's only one sheep in that flock that you want to be, isn't it? And that's the black one, you know? Because we've always, this is why you're here. This is why you are here. We're all black sheep together. Now the thing is that sheep are, and this is how they look at us, sheep are geared and they're raised. Has anyone ever raised sheep? Anyone been? No? You're a New Zealander, there's all sorts of things we could go there. We won't go there with that. Yeah? But the fact of the matter is that sheep are actually a commodity, and they're geared towards a commodity. A farmer keeps them as a commodity. And what happens is that he makes little sheep. Now the sheep think they're free, because he puts them into a corral and they're free to wander around and eat as they will, but only in a very small area. Okay? And you think you're free here because you're in the land of the free. You try going outside of the country without a passport. Then you find out how free you really are. Yeah? Or getting in. Yeah? So the sheep are geared towards a very specific commodity. The farmer keeps that. And of course, what happens to sheep as well? They get fleeced. Yeah? And we have that as an expression, do we not? Every now and then, every year, the taxman comes and he will fleece you for what he can sell for your product. Now, the farmer loves the sheep to breed, and don't we really like the little lambs in spring? Because he knows that there's more sheep that are going to be coming, because it actually increases his asset. That's why he does it. So the farmer allows the sheep a modicum of freedom, but is always looking to see how he can create the asset to be greater. The farmer is basically the government. But there are other parts and other people in this story. And of course, where there are sheep, there are also wolves. Now these are your multinationals, these are your insurance company, because the wolves are there only because the sheep are there. And the farmer understands that the wolves are there, but he has no real power over the wolves. Even though he has an ordered farm, the wolves can do pretty much what they want. Now, whereas the farmer protects the sheep, he gives them corrals and he feeds them, the wolves don't want anything to do with that. They just want to take you. They just want to eat you. Yeah, they don't want to give you any life, they don't want to give you any freedom, they just want to eat the sheep. That's what wolves do. And these are your multinationals and your insurance companies and your banks. They see you as sheep. They see you as food. And that's how it works. So the farmer knows that he can't just go and kill the wolves. He's actually got to live with the wolves, and he's okay with losing a few sheep every now and then. But another person comes into the fray here, and that is the sheepdog. The sheepdog is a very different kettle of fish here, because the sheepdog looks like a wolf. In fact, he displays all of the normal ways that a wolf would do. In fact, the sheep are afraid of the sheepdog because he has all the attributes of a wolf. Now, the wolves don't like the sheepdog. They can't understand why one of their cousins would actually work against them and put their lives on the line to protect the sheep. I am a sheepdog. I am here to give you information in order to be able to protect you from the wolves that are actually out there. And the sheepdog actually serves a higher purpose. He knows that if he works with the farmer, then actually he's got a long-term goal and a long-term career ahead of him. But what happens is that the sheepdog is there always vigilant, always looking for the wolf. Now, the sheepdog can actually work well because he understands wolves. And believe me, I have been a wolf. I have been on the other side. I've been a wolf. I know how wolves work. I know what they do. I know what their agenda is. I know what they're up to. And therefore, that makes me a particularly effective sheepdog. There are lots of sheepdogs, and there's a lot in this room as well. And there's going to be more sheepdogs that will actually start to arise that want to protect the flock. Because when more sheepdogs are there on their watch, it means that the wolves can't get in. And at that stage, it means that at some point, the sheep, because they don't need the farmer in reality, the farmer needs the sheep, but the sheep don't need the farmer. They can breed, they can eat, they can do all the things they want to do. But at one point, the sheep may just wake up and go, you know what, we don't need this anymore. And when all the sheep rise up, when all of them rise up, that's what we're going to get. We'll rise and rise again, where lambs become lions. And that is where the people need to rise. Once they understand what's going on, they will just say no to a one world currency, no to a one world order, no to a one world government, and stop sending their brothers and their sisters and their sons and their daughters to unjust wars to die in foreign lands. Because it does mean at some point that some of our people may want to have lives and not a flag-draped coffin and a bunch of medals. So I believe that people should actually not be afraid of their governments, but governments should very, very much be afraid of their people. My God, so they should be. because that is where we're about now. We're right here, right now. You know, once they start taking your guns away from you, they'll start taking your freedoms away from you. You'll almost demand more security. Do you think these CCTV cameras are actually there to protect you? No, they're not. They're linked in for the new technology that's coming through with facial recognition, which will be linked to your credit card, and it will actually be linked to marketing companies, so that you'll be walking past David Jones and what you've been looking at on the internet will suddenly appear in their adverts. You know, it's all subliminal advertising. This is all about fleecing you from your effort. That is what it's all about.